Well, today is election day for people living in Georgia's 13th congressional district. The winner will fill out the late Representative David Scott's term in Congress. Scott died back in April.
Atlanta News First, Niamani Watson is live at the County Line Ellenwood Library. Niamani, tell us about the two candidates running today.
Yeah, good morning. This is one of the places where people will go to vote in today's special election. And the two candidates include the late congressman's daughter and a former Gwinnett County School Board chair. Now, this area includes parts of Gwinnett, DeKalb, Clayton, Henry, Newton, and Rockdale counties. Former Gwinnett County School Board Chair Everton Blair says his vision for the district includes a focus on education and making connections with communities. Meanwhile, the late congressman's daughter, Marcy Scott, is hoping to follow in her father's footsteps. If elected, she says, while she may not always vote the exact same way as her father, voters can expect her to back the same policies her dad supported. Scott says she's hoping voters put faith in more than just her last name. Meanwhile, Blair says voters want something new.
I think even more importantly, they saw me in the community. They put a name with a face. It wasn't just somebody taking advantage of their last name.
Frankly, this seat should be earned. It should not be passed down, and our elections should be free and fair. And I want people to have kind of an inside look as what even does a member of Congress even do?
Now, the candidate who comes out on top Scott's term in Congress until January, and a separate general election in November will decide who will represent the 13th district for a full 2-year term. And as we get closer to the midterms, the Supreme Court is clearing the way for President Trump to restrict mail-in voting ahead of the midterm elections. The High Court ruled the administration can enforce parts of that March executive order, which lets the Postal Service punish states with the new delivery restrictions if they do not comply. Now, the Supreme Court did not rule on whether the executive order is legal, and it's still unclear on how much can be put in place before the midterm elections in November. Reporting live from DeKalb County, I'm Niamani Watson, Atlanta News First.